Welcome back. Each year, hundreds of billions of dollars of dirty money, largely the proceeds of crime, is cleaned by money launderers before it re-enters the global money market. And money launderers have many clients. 9/11 meant that the laundrymen also became targets of the so-called war on terror. And as the saying goes, it takes a thief to catch a thief.
Money launderers look just like the bankers who are trying to identify them, and that's the frightening thing. There is no legitimate business that's safe for money launderers because they'll find a way to pervert the system so that they can adapt it to move dirty cash.
Kenneth Rejok, Vietnam War veteran, successful lawyer, family man.
I am a veteran of over 100 successful domestic and international bulk cash smuggling operations. The U.S. attorney prosecuting only one of my client organizations stated that they earned in excess of $200 million.
Money laundering bankrolls the underground economy. It bankrupts countries, finances warfare, and fuels crime.
Yes, good boy.
9/11 changed the way the world looked at money laundering. Heightening fears illicit funds were being used to finance operations such as the attacks on the Twin Towers. How has the war on terror changed the U.S. law enforcement agency's stance towards money laundering?
Well, it's much more driven and serious now because they now have many more legislative tools that before were not available.
My name is Kenneth Rejok. I am the financial crime consultant for WorldCheck.
Now, instead of money laundering, Kenneth Rejok makes a career out of taking those who do to the cleaners.
Because the people who are your adversaries are so inventive, they are so enterprising, that they will go to any length to beat you. What did I do?
He works for a company called WorldCheck, traveling the globe, advising law enforcement agencies and bankers.
I am the only person in North America who has been a bank lawyer, a career money launderer, and a compliance officer all in the same lifetime.
Well, nobody wakes up one day and says, hey, today I'm not going to be a professional, I'm going to be a career criminal. It happened totally by accident. I was in the process of getting a divorce, and I needed a place to stay, so I moved in with two young ladies who I had met in a club. And I found a guy there who was just like me, the same age, also went to Vietnam. He was a middleman between Colombians moving cocaine into North America and Cubans and Americans who were then distributing it in the U.S. and Canada. And he became my new best friend. But soon on I realized what was happening. People were coming to visit him on the buying side with huge amounts of cash, and on the selling side with cocaine, which was then worth $55,000 a kilo. So I'm sitting here in this guy's house in the middle of his drug trafficking situation, and by osmosis or by exposure over the course of a number of months, I learned how the operations are conducted.
And learned how to use it. As a lawyer, Rejok had all the skills he needed to become a successful money launderer. People started to ask for favors.
First it was little things like register a boat, help me buy a plane, buy a house, let's sell my business, help me, I have a drunk driving case. But then one day somebody came to me and said, I have $6 million and I need to launder it.
That's where it all started.
I formed a number of companies, and then I loaded up all the clients in a Learjet and flew them down to the Caribbean and began a pipeline of trips. It's called bulk cash smuggling, and what it means is you're using a very primitive method of getting money into the worldwide banking system.
What does it mean to wash, dry, and fold money?
Money laundering is composed of three separate and distinct phases. The first phase is called placement. Placement is where you get dirty cash into the global banking system. In this case, we're smuggling cash, drug profits out of the United States into a tax haven country where they don't ask questions. The second phase is called layering. By layering, we mean then we would move it to another tax haven country, say to Panama, and then let's move it to another country in another part of the world, for example, Taiwan, and then we'll, by then, the money will have lost most of its criminal taint. So let's then finally move the money to a country in Western Europe, say France, set up a bogus financial company and then lend the money to ourselves in a place like the United Kingdom to buy the Hilton Hotel somewhere. That's why money laundering is so difficult, because if you can't get the money in the very beginning, you're never going to find out where it came from.
How did you get caught?
I never got caught. I was never apprehended in the act of committing money laundering crimes. I was frankly given up by people who I had protected for a decade.
You then started collaborating with the law enforcement agencies. How did that come about?
After I was in prison about 6 months, somebody in law enforcement who thought I was worth saving reached out to me and basically said, you know, you started out in the Army, you were a good lawyer, you know, you're salvageable, you should come back over to our side. And I participated in the first ever American-Swiss money laundering case. They wanted me to show them how do all these little money laundering tactics evolve, and how does one practice money laundering.
You now also try and predict opportunities that money launderers are going to exploit. What are you looking out for?
The average person who reads the newspapers every day, whether it's the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal, they're in the front of the paper and they're reading the business news that they need to survive in their job. They're also reading the political news and the national and international news. Well, while they're in the front of the paper, I'm in the back of the paper. I'm looking for some little obscure note that says some country in Eastern Europe is going to move to the euro in 3 years. Well, and I cut that out. Now, why is that important to me? Because I know at the moment I'm seeing that, a number of money launderers are also looking at it, because they know that on the day of conversion, when all the grandmothers in that country take money out of the mattress and convert it, the government doesn't have the staff to ask for source of funds on 30 million people. So they'll move a lot of dirty cash into that country and buy businesses knowing that they can turn it into clean euros in 3 years. There's an old maxim, the best time to rob a bank is in the middle of a war. Well, that's how money launderers operate.
Although countering money laundering is one of the biggest challenges facing governments today, Rejock urges caution.
Some law enforcement agencies use the terror card to investigate criminal activity. One wonders why law enforcement agencies will use the cards, the powerful cards, which they are supposed to be using for counterterrorism, for routine and regular criminal investigation.
So who are the victims of that?
Well, the only victims are our civil rights and our freedoms, because just because we have the war on terrorism doesn't mean that we're going to ever want to degenerate into a dictatorship. And I realize there are a lot of people involved in human rights and civil rights issues in this country that are upset about it, and they are 100% correct.
That was Ken Rejock, money launderer turned law enforcer. In March last year, we brought you the story of the people of Indonesia's Aceh province and their attempts to bring US oil giant ExxonMobil to court over alleged killings by Indonesian soldiers.
They laid me flat, and they had a bayonet. Sometimes it didn't pierce the skin, so they took a knife to pierce the skin. And they wrote GAM on my back. It was their soldiers who caught me. It was A-13, which was the unit hired by Exxon to protect them.
In a legal setback to ExxonMobil last week, a federal judge in the United States has decided that the 7-year-old lawsuit can go to trial. ExxonMobil says it will vigorously defend against these baseless claims. We'll keep you posted. That's it for this edition of People in Power. If you would like to comment on our films or on any other matter, we'd love to hear from you on aljazeera.net/English. Until next time, goodbye.